significant order for materials that are used to manufacture ballistic missiles. The order, reportedly from a Chinese supplier, could dramatically escalate Iran's missile capabilities and bolster its proxy forces in the region. According to a new report from the Wall Street Journal, Iran has ordered large quantities of ammonium perchlorate, a key component in solid fuel missiles. Sources familiar with the transaction say the material is enough to produce up to 800 ballistic missiles. Some of the material will be likely sent to militias in the region aligned with Iran, including Houthis in Yemen. The deal was reportedly brokered between Iranian firm Pishgaman, Teherat Rafinovin Company, and Hong Kong-based Leon Commodities Holdings Limited. The material is expected to arrive in Iran in the coming months. The revelation comes amid the resumption of nuclear talks between Iran and the United States. Despite 5 rounds of negotiations, the two nations remain at a stalemate over uranium enrichment. Watchdogs say Tehran now possesses enough enriched uranium to produce up to 9 nuclear bombs and has blocked inspectors from several key sites. US President Donald Trump has vowed to not allow any enrichment. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says abandoning uranium enrichment will be against Tehran's interests.
Well, they won't be enriching. If they enrich, then we're going to have to do it the other way, and I don't really want to do it the other way, but we're going to have to enrich.
What's your latest?
There's not going to be enrichment.
Meanwhile, Israel has assured the White House it will not take any military action against Iran unless US-led negotiations with Tehran collapse.
Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Investigate Everything. I'm your host, Brian O'Shea. I got an urgent message from Brandon Weichert, who's going to be joining us soon. And let me just say, the world is on fire. And it is amazing to me that you spend a few days. Sorry, let me just get rid of that. Okay, you spend a few days looking at domestic issues and you miss everything that's happening in the world. So I had no idea that this was happening with Iran. And then I go on to X, and Laura Loomer's reporting that there's been cyber attacks on Kuwait and Saudi and everything else. And others are reporting that Iranian nuclear facilities and their cyber networks have been hacked. I'm going to let Brandon unpack all of this for you. But let me just say one thing. Now is not the time to rest. Now is not the time to let your guard down. Brandon and I talked just a few days ago about the threat of drone attacks that we saw in Ukraine. Well, those drone attacks could easily happen here. Usually, war with certain countries is preceded by terrorist attacks. And those attacks are basically to get that country's National Guard to focus inward. Well, what's happening right now? We've got riots everywhere right now in Chicago, LA, over ICE, supposedly. Well, that's deployed a lot of National Guard, but this weekend there's riots. You could call them protests if you want, but we all know what they are, called No Kings. Well, those are planned for June 14th, the 250th birthday anniversary of the U.S. Army, which I am a proud combat veteran of, so I'm a little pissed off about that. Well, a lot pissed off. But these things are planned across the country. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. I don't want to keep Brandon too long. He was kind enough to alert me to everything, so I want to bring him onto the stage. But let me just say this. As you think about prepping and getting ready for things, take this stuff seriously. Nuclear weapons can hit at any time. And do you know, for all of you critics of Golden Dome, which is the intercontinental ballistic defense system, among other things, it defends against that President Trump has put into the budget. We're one of the only major countries that doesn't have that sort of defense. So be ready for anything, because anything can happen at any time. Even if talks resume with Iran, you're going to have zealots. You're going to have terrorist attacks. It's going to happen. A lot of people around the world and a lot of people in this country are not happy that President Trump is securing our nation and that they're not breaking down borders and living out that globalist dream of this one world order where everyone's the same, which never happens. Hint, hint. So just keep that in mind. Be ready. And, it's also a very, very good time to... I normally don't talk about sponsors at the beginning of a show, but I will say this. One of our sponsors, the Wellness Company, they actually have kits that I really recommend everyone should have in their possession, in their car, in their home, because you just never know what's going to happen, even with crime up. So, again, I normally don't do this, but I'm going to. Brandon, you hang with me if you don't mind, because I don't want to do this in the middle of you talking. But the Wellness Company is definitely one of my favorite sponsors, and certainly check out those kits that they have. They have a contagion emergency kit, the medical emergency kit. They even have this field emergency kit. That's the big boy. They even have a radiation emergency kit. We'll be calling Peter Galuli tomorrow, the CEO of the Wellness Company, and saying, hey man, can I get a big discount on the radiation emergency kit? Because if the nukes start falling, I at least want to survive long enough to live through the horrible zombie apocalypse that follows. But be ready, be frosty, don't take anything for granted, and make sure you're letting your neighbors know what's going on in the world. But before I get too alarmist, let me bring Brandon to the stage. And by the way, what you want to do is you want to go to dailyclouthealth.com. dailyclouthealth.com and receive a big discount. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. There, it's on right there. Okay, and that is our affiliate link with the Wellness Company. Check out all of their emergency kits. Yes, I know some of these prices might be awe-inspiring, but they're definitely worth it. They have everything you need. I use this blue one all the time, especially for fear of Lyme disease. Ticks are on the rise, and you name it. This stuff can save your life. Remember, when you don't have medical attention, a little cut that gets infected can become a life or death experience. So go to dailyclouthealth.com, use promo code dailyclout, and get 10% off, and let us know what you think of those products. Okay, enough of that. So we are going to bring Brandon on stage. Brandon, here you are. What the hell is going on?
Well, thank you for having me as always.
Thanks for coming.
I'm happy to be here. Wish it were under better circumstances. It does look like we are possibly hours, even less than that, possibly from a major air operation against suspected Iranian nuclear weapons facilities. Around 3:30 p.m. Eastern this afternoon, I started getting messages from friends of mine and sources of mine.
And Brandon, I'm sorry, really quickly, tell the audience a little bit about yourself for those who are new, just so they know why people would be sending you anything.
So absolutely. I am right now, my current job is senior national security editor at the National Interest, which is one of the most respected publications in Washington, D.C., bipartisan. It's national security, as the name suggests. And I'm an author of 4 very popular national security books, one of which is actually on the Iran issue. I predicted that the 10/7 attacks are going to happen about a year and a half before they did happen. I predicted it almost to a T. And I'm also a occasional subject matter expert for the Department of Defense, specifically, usually the Department of the Air Force. And then I'm a former congressional staffer as well. So through all of those kind of points, I have a lot of contacts throughout the U.S. military, intelligence community, and throughout the Middle East. And I was getting notifications from people, particularly Israeli sources, who were telling me today's the day. And what do you mean? What's going on? And they are preparing to go hard with airstrikes against
the Israelis.
The Israelis are going hard against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, here's the pretext. Basically, it hasn't been reported yet. My source told me, and this is from, I'm connected with a lot of people. My source told me that the president Trump was originally going to make a speech tonight in which he was going to announce the breakdown in talks with the Iranians, and that he was going to announce his belief that the Iranians cannot be dealt with in a reasonable manner. And this was going to basically give the Israelis a green light to go hard against the Iranians. And then, of course, we would be on the hook militarily for mopping up whatever was left over, because the Iranians are not just going to retaliate against Israel. They're going to hit our bases and our embassies and whatnot. This speech has not happened tonight. And now the reason I'm hearing is because the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, which sort of is the watchdog for all nuclear development in the world, they said about 2 hours ago, their chief said that he needs basically till the morning to get his team together to basically kind of make the case for why Iran is not in compliance with IAEA standards and international law. And so I suspect Trump's going to wait till tomorrow probably to make some kind of a statement. But I would be paying attention for that, because once he makes that statement, it's a green light for full military operations to commence.
By a joint force, or
no?
by
My
Israel?
suspicion. No, my suspicion is it's going to be Israel going in first, and then we're going to go after them, because what's going to happen is Iran is
into
going to
Iran
with airstrikes. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a ground operation, but obviously, there will probably undoubtedly be some ground element, lasing targets and whatnot.
Of course, yeah.
But basically, no big military, no ground footprint yet. Now, what I have been monitoring, some things like the base, all of our bases have been getting evac orders for non-essential personnel. This has been going on now for about 7 hours. The one to watch out for, the really sensitive base, is our facility in Bahrain. which is a major naval facility. We have a lot of air operations that go out of there. I was told about 2.5 hours ago by somebody there over Telegram, I was told that the order for evacuation of non-essential personnel was originally set to be standby, but they've now switched it over to pull them out. And the bases in, or not bases, but embassies in Iraq, embassies in Jordan, embassies in throughout the Middle East, the embassies our embassies are pulling the diplomats and their families out beginning about 5 hours ago. So this is a massive drawdown. And Trump was asked about that tonight on his way to the Kennedy Center. He is viewing Victor Hugo's Les Mis, which I think is very fitting considering what's going on.
Funny, I referenced that play the other day. I said these riots are not Les Miserables.
Well,
they are les ennemis.
and I think those are connected, by the way, to what's going on. But anyway,
I was going to ask you about that. Okay, good.
But I just want to keep going with what I know about what's happening in the region. So the bases, about 4.5 hours ago, Jordan and Kuwait suffered debilitating cyber attacks across their critical infrastructure. About an hour and 15 minutes ago, I received word that Saudi Arabia is now enduring similar attacks. So these are widespread, persistent cyber attacks directed against Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Kuwait. These are three primary U.S. partners in the region. Saudi Arabia is obviously, oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, yes, there's, she has that now too. I see. Okay. There were also reports this afternoon out of Anbar province in Iraq. Remember Anbar province? That was a big place where our troops were stationed during the war. The skies over Anbar were apparently dotted with U.S. warplanes. A very abnormal amount of them were flying overhead. This was initially what triggered me sort of stopping my day, which is what I did to kind of focus on the breaking news coming out of there, because that's a significant point. Nothing has come of that. We know that they're there. People are recording it on the ground. You can visibly see U.S. warplanes high in the sky, really packed skyline, and it's still going on now. I'm getting reports that 4 of the Iron Dome systems in Israel have been repositioned. And this comes on the heels of a massive Houthi strike on Ben Gurion International Airport, which is Israel's main international airport. Happened about 2.5 hours ago. They're clearing the airspace. In fact, the last 3 hours I've watched in real time on the flight tracker. They've basically reorganized the entire Middle East airspace.
Unbelievable. Wow.
I was told as well, at 5 p.m. Eastern, I was told, now this has not been confirmed. I just want to make this clear. I'm just reporting the raw data I'm seeing on my Twitter. I'm not posting anything at national interest because we have to go through a vetting process. Everything I say on Twitter, and I make it clear it's unconfirmed, but I think it's worth talking about because people should know and be ahead of the curve. Because I think the people who are talking to me are people who they're in Israel and they're not just civilians. They're telling me stuff, and I think this is legit. But I was told at 5 p.m. Eastern that a squadron of F-35I Adirs, which is the F-35 that Israel has, which is their most advanced warplane, and F-16Is, the Sufas, were deployed from, I believe, Nevatim Air Base, and they were flying at that point over Al-Kunis or Al-Kunar, in southern Syria, which is part of the air corridor that Netanyahu established after Assad collapsed. And that's an air corridor linking Israeli airspace through Syrian, northern Iraqi airspace into
Brandon,
Iranian
I'm going to pull up
airspace.
Google Earth so you can just kind of guide me through so everyone knows where you're talking about.
Yeah.
Keep going, please.
And so basically now those Israeli planes, I don't know if that was because that's from one Israeli source. And I also think the Israelis are doing a lot of perception management right now. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that a lot of the people talking to me in Israel are close to the government there, and they know I have a somewhat of a voice, and they know that I'm connected with people in DC, and I think there's some perception management. They might be using me You know, and I
Right.
don't, you know, so I'm just your
And
audience.
just so people understand the way that works, there's a lot of manipulation where people like Brandon, people like I used to be, will be fed information
Yeah.
that seems very viable and very well sourced. So we report on it to distract people. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
But I think the distraction might be timing, but I do believe the Israelis have decided to go in. And this is just based on everything I'm hearing, not only from Israeli sources, but I'm hearing from American sources. You know, this looks like, whether it's happening now, something that I was said is that Netanyahu really, quote, liked doing this on or around Shabbat, which is this Friday. So, you know, I would say it could happen within the next few hours. It could happen.
Why would, just out of curiosity, so having a Jewish wife, I am a Shabbat, newbie.
Right.
But, Shabbat, for those that don't know, is, I don't know why they do it. You could explain, but, from Friday's sunset to Saturday sunset, you don't do any work. You don't mess with any devices. Why would the Israelis, who would observe Shabbat, decide to essentially work, for lack of a better term, on Shabbat? Because it wouldn't be expected.
I would assume that's the case. I said on or around Shabbat. That's what I heard. So I don't, I think of the Big Lebowski, Shomer Shabbos, So I don't know for sure if it is going to be on Shabbat. But something that I was told by a pretty former senior IAF guy is that that quote, they really like on or around Shabbat. So, and Netanyahu's done, basically. He's done. I'm still waiting.
Wait. How does that, what you just said, segue into Netanyahu's done?
No, I mean, he's done basically with giving.
He's had enough.
The negotiations.
Okay.
Trump has been hinting at this now for the last 48 to 96 hours, which is basically, and there's another pretext here. So this morning I awoke to a report out of the Middle East. The Iranians supposedly successfully tested a 2 megaton or kiloton. I think it was kiloton, actually. Maybe it was megaton. Anyway, a small low yield nuclear warhead underground over the weekend. And Trump was asked in the last 24 hours about the negotiations with Iran. And he, for a third time in the last week, reiterated that if they enrich, he's done talking to them, because that's a non-starter for him in terms of
and I think he said that in the cold open.
Yeah, he did, and he's been saying it for weeks. He's been saying it for a while. But the problem is that then at the same time he has Witkoff go and meet the Iranians and say, well, maybe we'd be open to low yield enrichment, which really kind of confuses the situation. But anyway, with a 2 ton warhead. Thank you. Yes, that's the report. But then I just heard, before I got on the air with you, a report that the Iranians claimed they were in the process of enriching up to 90% uranium. And basically, this was sort of the deal breaker for Trump, was that he felt he was being taken advantage of. But then again, Kurt Mills, a dear friend of mine, is, he was just on with Steve Bannon earlier this afternoon. And he was saying that his sources were telling him there was a, quote, significant breakthrough in the Witkoff talks with the Iranian foreign minister this morning, and that was actually the pretext for why Netanyahu decided to go forward and begin this air operation, or the movement toward it, because he now knows the Americans might actually get a deal, and he doesn't want a deal. But everything I'm seeing right now indicates the Israelis.
Say that again. You broke up a little.
Sorry, can you hear me?
You broke up a little, Brandon. Can you just say that last sentence again about this is why,
so
got
Kurt Mills,
from Witkoff on.
Yeah, so Kurt Mills was on, and I know Kurt, and he wrote the foreword for one of my books, and I write occasionally for the American Conservative, where he's the editor of, but he's very connected with a lot of Qatari and a lot of Middle Eastern sources, and he's very deeply connected with the Trump administration. He was on with Bannon about 2 hours ago, and he indicated that his sources were telling him, in fact, contrary to media reports, Witkoff, the special envoy for Trump, and the Iranian foreign minister had a breakthrough in the morning meeting they had together. And it was at that point that the Israelis through their intelligence networks, found out about this breakthrough where it looked like Trump might actually be able to get us a deal. And the Israelis are now trying to basically sabotage it with this war drum beating. I don't know if that's true. And Kurt didn't seem like he really knew if it was for sure. But that is one of the data points out there. My personal view is, just from speaking with certain people I've spoken to, it sounds like Trump in the last 48 to 96 hours has really kind of soured on the idea of negotiating with the Iranians. And when he got word that they tested this nuclear weapon and that they were enriching up to 90% earlier today, that's when he basically he's done, and he's going to let Netanyahu do what Netanyahu wants to do. And now he's
done. He's had enough. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Now, Netanyahu said a very strange thing today. While all this was going on with us pulling people out of the Middle East, he said, he goes, I don't think it will happen, but if we, Israel, falls, we will take large portions of the world down with us. Now, I don't know what the hell. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that meant, but that was very scary. And I have been saying for a while that I think Netanyahu is completely overstepped and that he's completely boxed himself in strategically very poorly. And he is not acting really like a rational actor anymore.
Really?
And I say this as somebody who's very sympathetic to Netanyahu, but he's acting very irresponsibly, in my opinion. Here's what's going to happen. I talked about this. I've been following the story since it happened last October. When Assad fell, the Israeli Air Force took that as a moment of opportunity to create an air corridor linking their territory with Iran over broken Syria and northern Iraq. And October of last year, right after Assad fell and Syria's in chaos, Netanyahu deployed a very large staggered force of warplanes to fly that air corridor and bomb Iran. Now, you might remember this. This is the first time, I think, ever that they bombed Iran, or first time in decades. Israeli F-35Is made it into northern Iran, and they began going to target. And they ended up blowing up a handful of Russian-made air defense system, the S-300s, which is a relatively modern air defense system the Russians have. And after they blew up a handful, 5 or 6 of those S-300s, the plan was to basically, as you know, make a hole through the Iranian AD systems that would allow for a larger force of Israeli warplanes to fly in and really go to town on those targets in Iran. In fact, one of the Israelis I know said the original plan, actually, no, this wasn't an Israeli, this was a DIA guy that I know. The DIA guy told me that the original plan was basically to bomb Tehran and to kind of fly around Tehran after bombing it, kind of rubbing it in their nose, spiking the football. But what happened was the first wave of Israeli planes made it to Iran, and they blew up those handful of S-300s. And son of a bitch, wouldn't you know it, it turns out the Iranian AD systems, air defense systems, were much more comprehensive and layered than what the Israelis projected. And the Israelis had to immediately call off the attack because they were worried about losing their F-35Is to those other Russian systems. The Iranians also have some indigenous systems that are actually quite impressive, including the Bavar 316, I think, or 326. But anyway, so that's the reason why. And then you remember the Israelis were running around after that strike. They said it was an unqualified success. We have escalation dominance. One of the Israeli generals said Iran is now lying naked and waiting for us to take advantage. And it turns out that, and I broke this story, and I have confirmation on this, it turns out that was a lie, that the reason they haven't gone back in since October.
When was that? When was that, Brandon? Slow down just a little. Slow down a little bit. You're a genius. You're full of information, and my head's about to explode.
The Israeli strike occurred in October. I don't remember the exact date, but it was mid to late October 2024. And
now what you're saying also indicates that Israeli intelligence is not what it used to be.
No, it's not. It's not. And it's not because, yes, they had that brilliant pager attack on Hezbollah, but remember they missed October 7th. Whether they knew about it and stood down because they didn't think it was going to be a problem or whatever, the fact of the matter is Israeli intelligence missed it. They were not coordinated, they were not prepared, and they were not standing by to defend. So whether it was a simple thing of just underestimating the threat or they completely missed it, they missed it in action, if not in thought and capability.
Gotcha.
So that's a big intelligence failure. By the way, the Israelis, and I say this as somebody who's generally sympathetic to the Israelis. They were attacked. I think that they had a right to respond. I just think they went a little overboard. The Israelis went into Gaza, and again, they hailed that as a success, but it actually wasn't a success because they're having to go back in now. And remember when they were initially responding immediately after 10/7, they were doing these briefings where
like
they were
search. Yeah.
Well, no, before they went in, but like a week or two before they actually committed, they brought in a bunch of U.S. Marines who had fought in Fallujah, and they were using these guys. A lot of them were retired, and they flew them out, and they met with senior IDF people who were going to be leading troops into Gaza, because the idea was it was going to be a Fallujah type attack. They were going to go door to door. They were going to round out these terrorists. They were going to kill or capture them one at a time, house to house, door to door.
Right. Yeah, that was the plan. I remember that.
And so they tried the first week or two of the war. It was an effing disaster. Too many Israelis got killed. The Israeli army was not prepared for that kind of fight. And then they converted into Stalingrad, where they just started flattening everything and killing all the civilians and we know all the rest. But that was a result of a failed battlefield intelligence. They did not realize the kind of resistance they were going to meet and the kind of battle-hardened capabilities that Hamasniks had. Now go north, another failure of Israeli intelligence. Netanyahu had it in his head that after he closed off with Gaza, he was going to be able to pivot and go north and take on Hezbollah. And yes, the Pager operation is one of the most brilliant counterterrorism missions. They'll be teaching that for decades to come, and good for them. But you and I both know in a terrorist organization like Hezbollah, they have plenty of other people waiting in the wings to take over. And that is precisely what has happened. The question the question people should be asking is, A, why did they have to resort to that if they were already doing a kind of, preparing to do an invasion? And B, why haven't they gone again after the Hezbollah? Well, it's because Hezbollah actually is more capable and competent than they were prepared to handle. And in fact, the Israelis are quite afraid to fight Hezbollah right now because Hezbollah...
Really?
Yes.
Now nobody is saying that. And last time you were on the show, you were talking about a very realistic view of China's capabilities, and you made some enemies of India.
Yeah, I did. And, I've done a lot of work with the Indians. I'm a big fan generally of the Indians. They are a natural partner against China. I'm certainly no lover of the Islamists in Pakistan. And again, with Kashmir, I think the Indians were attacked and they had a right to respond. But my argument was, just looking at the 4-day war, Indians didn't perform well, and that's partly because of the technology they were using. And now you would think, well, they're using French warplanes primarily, which are some of the best. The Dassault Rafale. It's one of the best warplanes in the world. It's one of the most exported planes in the world. People swear, Americans I know who've flown them swear by these planes, say they're great planes. Well, the French made weapons, and the missiles and the warplanes didn't work compared to the far cheaper Chinese systems the Pakistanis were using. And the Pakistanis were able to, now they didn't win the war, but they were able to prevent the Indians from accomplishing their mission in the first 2 days, which then forced India to radically climb up the escalation ladder, where they started blowing up nuclear weapons depots, which is why Trump then got involved and got JD to basically get President Modi of India to stop the war immediately, because the Indians started blowing up Pakistani nuclear weapons facilities and command and control facilities because the Indians were routed so badly at the lower threshold of war. They tried to escalate into the higher one in order to kind of get a beat on the Pakistanis, who were using very good Chinese technology. And so our intelligence, Western intelligence, and Israel's part of Western intelligence, we're getting it wrong, and our technology is not doing as well as it should, and it's overpriced. And so the failures of Mossad.
Wait, I mean, how do we get that type of intelligence wrong? Our own capabilities. I understand not getting China good intel from China. It's really hard to even keep. Most of our assets were killed like 10 years ago.
Yeah. 2013.
And so it's like, but knowing are people just word of worried about being shot as a messenger, and so reporting back to the president, and not the current president. He just started, but in general, are
Well,
people
I'm sorry to say, but the current president is also to blame for this, because the moment he started talking about a trillion dollar defense budget and an F-47 sixth generation warplane, which is going to cost, I think, $300 million per unit, that he kind of lost all credibility on this one.
How did he lose it?
Because he's feeding the beast. He's feeding them. He's not forcing. Hegseth is not. Look, why did Doge not get to go to the Pentagon? Bannon is all over Elon for not crossing the Potomac. Well, there's
rightfully so.
Yes, but there's another side to that story. The other side to the story is Pete Hegseth put the kibosh on Doge going into the Pentagon. That was one of his first actions as Secretary of Defense. And I can't tell you how I know that, but I know it. And Hegseth put the kibosh on it almost immediately. He did not let them go in the way that Elon wanted to go carte blanche, full bore, take it all on.
So Elon did want to go in, because I remember that. I remember listening to Bannon.
He was hitting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and then he was going to go to defense. And that was right when he started talking about going to defense. That's when Hegseth stepped in. That was right around the time Rubio also put up a fight. Rubio and Hegseth sort of formed like an interlocking group to stop Doge from going into their respective agencies. So, and Trump could have intervened and said, no, this is what I want, but he didn't. And now he's talking about $1 trillion defense budget. But my point here is, and the reason we don't know, how we would not know, is because our defense, you were a contractor, our defense apparatus is so elephantine and so stovepiped and so compartmentalized. And our politicians are so in the pocket of the major defense contractors.
Oh, big time.
They're looking at those defense contractors and saying, at the end of my term, I might not get reelected, so I need to make sure I'm in good with these guys so I can get on their board, like Nikki Haley with Boeing. So, when she left the UN job in the first term of Trump, she landed right at Boeing. And a lot of the think tanks are funded by these things. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of the think tanks in DC are exclusively funded by special interest. So a lot of the people,
like MITRE, a major defense contractor, is technically technically a nonprofit.
Right, of course. Yeah, but that
right.
I think Doge has proven the nonprofit lie. But my point is, so you ask how politicians and policymakers may not know.
Right.
It's because they don't want to know in many cases, or they simply don't have the information because the people around them don't want them to know.
But, really my inquiry was more like, look, I get them not wanting to know because the contract ends, but if your equipment is not working, I don't want to sound naive, but if your equipment is not working on the battlefield, especially when really, let's face the facts, this big, beautiful bill was not at all accepted by most of the nation. And then suddenly, little spin, little riot, and the 250th birthday coming up. And it's been, I'd say Trump has masterfully messages this as, I'm giving this to you, U.S. Army. You're getting the biggest budget ever. And so I guess my question is, though, if the equipment is not working, that's going to lead to long-term problems. Yeah. Do they just not care?
I think on some level they don't, because they figure, hey, that's more of an excuse to get more money to do what
right.
And I think
if
also,
you're not part of the solution, there's good money to be made in promoting the problem.
There's a great movie that Kelsey Grammer started in the 90s. It was an HBO movie. I think it was called The Pentagon Wars, and it was all about how the striker was the disaster, and it was really actually an accurate snapshot. If you want to know what the Pentagon procurement process is, you watch that 1996 HBO comedy starring Kelsey Grammer, and it's a true story. It's based on a true story, and it's highly watchable even today. And it's all about how corrupt and broken the procurement process is at the Pentagon. I talk to acquisitions all the time when I'm up in DC. That's one of my groups that I talk to. And those guys, when the camera's not on and when nobody's around, and I start saying what I say, they pull me aside. And 9 out of 10 times, at least the older guys, they're like, yeah, it's worse than you're even saying. And it's like everybody knows and nobody wants to say anything because nobody wants to lose their pension. And nobody wants to.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And so
but it's not so unbelievable.
It's not, though. I mean, you know.
And just as a sidebar, kind of in the same realm. So, you know, I was technically defense, but I was intelligence, so more manpower type stuff.
Right.
But one of the things that would happen in one of, you know, the intel agencies I worked at was that you'd have tons of money going out to like assets, you know, on the ground who were not even doing their job.
Right.
But they would never fire those assets, meaning they'd never end the relationship because no case officer wanted to be the case officer that ended their term, their 2-year like stint, with less assets than they started with because they get rated on how many assets they recruit.
That's right. Well, here's a story from SEAL Team 2. One of my favorites, a good friend of mine. He was in Iraq. I think it was SEAL Team 2 or 3. He was in Iraq during the war, and he said at the end of the budget cycle, his commanding officer told him and his team, go in the helicopter, and I want you to fire all of your guns into the Euphrates River. And my buddy was like, why? And he was like, because he goes, we need new ammo. We need more ammo, and this is how we're going to get. This is how we're going to get it. And so
was it the end of the fiscal year?
Yes, it was end of FY. And he said, so for 2 hours, him and his buddies had fun just blowing up the Euphrates River. He said all the Iraqi fishermen thought we were effing nuts. But he said we cleared all the barrels. And when we got back, the CO said, okay, boys, this is how we're going to get new ammo. And so that's government.
But dude, you know, on the same vein, we used to every year in Special Forces in 5th and 1st where I was at, we would do that. Like towards the end of the fiscal year, trust me, it's a lot of fun. But you know, in hindsight, it's kind of like, well, geez, what a waste of money.
Good ammunition is being.
I would go out. Yeah. I forgot what we called it. We called it. We had a nickname for the range, but we'd go out there, and you know, I had a 203 attached to my my M4A1, and for those that don't know, 203 is a grenade launcher, and I would just take a cardboard box, kind of crack it open because I was going to be there for a while. I don't want to sit on the rocks. And I'd sit down Indian style with a crate of high explosive 203 rounds and just popping them off like dunk, dunk all day long, just burning ammo.
Yep. And that's the mindset of the bureaucracy. And this is the problem. Because they don't live in the real world. They don't understand. I heard somebody tell me, I think it was Eric Prince who was talking about this, how generals have no idea how much money things cost because they don't have to know, because then the government, you just deploy what you need and they'll have your back. Whereas if you're a private military contractor like Blackwater was, you would have to kind of know, well, I have, because it's on a much tighter budget. But so our government, so when you say how can they don't know the systems don't work. They don't want to know the systems don't work well. We have plenty of instances where the F-35 is underperforming and they keep pouring money into this program, which is the 5th generation warplane. There are plenty of examples. In fact, they spent hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars developing the M10 Booker, which was this ridiculous. It was don't call it a tank was what the Army used to say, but it was a light tank. And after years of developing it, it's ready to roll. And it was a stupid thing anyway, but it was ready to roll this year. And Hegseth came in. It was the one system they cut for the new budget. They canceled the M10 Booker, which was fine. It's a terrible system, but we already spent all this money on it. They should have canceled it at the beginning when they knew it wasn't. They knew it wasn't going to work. And the Navy warships are even worse than anything the Army or the Air Force are going through.
Really,
you look at the Constellation class. This is another story I've been breaking for the last 2 years. The Constellation class frigate that's being built. It was enacted to be built in the last year of the Trump administration, the first term. Then Biden comes in and his acquisitions team, and they're partnered with Fincantieri, which is the Italian ship maker, and they have a facility in Wisconsin. And the reason we partnered with them to build this new frigate is because we want it to be more interoperable with the European navies. And it's a wonderful shipbuilder, this Italian
Whoa. Time out. As things are going now, we want it to be more interoperable with the European navies.
And it was Trump who began the construction.
Okay, Brandon, what is going on, man? What's happening?
So I think I said it to you before when we were talking.
I just don't. I don't understand any. Like, I'm hearing one thing, I'm seeing another.
Let me just
I
close
trust
the loop.
you.
Let me just
I'm
close
so
the loop.
frustrated. Go
Let me
ahead.
close the loop on the constellation. So it gets better. So when Biden takes over, every time a new presidency, particularly a new president from a rival party, and you could probably find my essays on it if you just type in my name in constellation class, because I've written a bunch.
Are you on this?
Not on breaking defense. I'm on national interest, but breaking defense is solid. They're good. But it gets better. So every president comes in, especially if it's from a rival party, and they basically want to kind of review everything. If they're smart, they're going to want to review everything. So when it came to this program, his people liked the program, but they wanted to make changes. And so they started instituting these fundamental changes to the schematics of the ship. The only problem is Fincantieri had already cut and laid the steel for.
Is that the Finnish steel provider?
Yes. So
Okay.
the shipbuilder. So they had already cut the steel, and so they kept telling the Pentagon, if you want to make any design changes, you got to do it before we cut the steel, because basically it's a moot ship. Then we can't use it. And they waited until after they cut the steel. And then they added so much. Now the ship, if it were to be built as the Pentagon, and they kept making changes, and they basically changed, moving the goalposts. Basically, by the end of the process, here it is, the nightmare. By the end of the process, had they followed through with all of the changes, the ship would be bigger than what it was planned to be, and it would flip over. It would be too top heavy. And so this is classic Pentagon waste. They are now having to redo the whole program, starting almost from scratch. It's going to delay the frigate. It's going to make the older frigates have to stay in longer. And so anyway, my point is, so this is classic DOD. And so when you tell me that, how can they not know? The question is, how can they not know? Right? Because this has been going on now, and there have been multiple GAO, Government Accountability Office studies on all these systems saying the same thing. They're too expensive. They're too unwieldy. They take too long to build. They're too hard to maintain. And by the way, we need more people to operate them than we have, and things like that. And yet we keep buying these systems, and these systems are increasingly not relevant to the modern battlefield. And this is why China has our ass waiting for. They're going to wait to grab our ass, because this is how we lose wars. This is what France was like in the interwar years. They built a military to fight a war from yesterday.
Wow.
So
so what's with all the saber rattling though? I mean, that's the thing. Is that a bluff? That's a dangerous game, man.
Well, we're the definition of a midwit, and you will find any Washington D.C. bureaucrat. That is what you're dealing with. We're not led by the best and brightest. You know that. You worked in government. Anybody who worked in government for 6 months will tell you we're not led by the best and brightest. I had an intern who worked for me on the Hill. He was a great kid, Chris, and he was really bright. University of Florida engineering, geo engineer, or geo. He was going into the oil sector, and he wanted to do an internship on the Hill before he went in. And I was trying. He was one of the smartest kids, and I was like, Chris, I'm like, if you stick with we need talent up here. And he finally looked at me. He goes, first of all, you guys don't get paid enough. He goes, second of all, why would I want to work with all of these people? Just look. And he pointed at everybody in the office. It was his last day, and he was like, he goes, I'm not talking about you, Weichert. He goes, but he said everybody in this office is effed. He goes, and it's like this everywhere up here. Because I'm going to work in the oil industry where they actually know what they're doing. And so this is why
he's right.
He's right. Our government.
I mean, look, Brandon. My war story there is we had a guy. We were going in the office I was in at that certain agency. We were doing great. I had a guy working for me who was a university professor who specialized in propaganda. Kind of a good skill set to have when you're doing propaganda. And for all you deep state people out there, not against Americans at that time, but this new guy comes in. He's kind of looked like a sausage in casing, and he still had the suit he had probably from his 18-year-old wedding, but the thing was he got put in charge of the whole group, and he came right out of the military, and his father-in-law was some general. I think that's how he got the job, and he had some connections. So all of a sudden he's in charge. He takes the university professor from my team, and he puts him on leaflets, and then he's telling me how, as a case officer, he's like, yeah, when I get to in country, I like to sit and have a scotch and then kind of think about the mission and all. And I said, I would think you'd want to maybe, if you're going to be in the lounge, maybe recruit some assets or start making some connections or getting a lay of the land. And he's like, I'll see you in my office. That's what we're dealing with. Like, these people, a lot of these people in government are idiots, and the problem is what's the term? They don't fire anyone. Basically, they kick them up.
Right, they kick them up, and the people they do make life hell for are the people who are actual innovators.
And contractors.
Right. There's a reason I'm not still up there. I got run out. I dared.
Well, I got run out. I got run out too, my friend.
And I had a very promising career ahead of me. I could have kept my mouth shut, my head down, like everybody would tell me to do. But I was like, no, I'm going to tell the right thing. And I was like,
I always said it's like Survivor Island.
Yeah, it is.
Like if you've ever watched Survivor Island, if you're too good, you get kicked off the island. If you're not doing shit, like nothing at all, eventually you get kicked off the island. It's the gray matter that doesn't really change anything or do anything or make anything better or worse. They're the ones that make it to the end, and that is the state of our military and intelligence infrastructure.
And it's true not just in our system, to a lesser degree, it's true in the Israeli system. I mean, the Israelis are a Western country. They are they are derived from us. We are derived from them, however you want to say it. But their system is very similar, and this is the curse of democracy. In general, it becomes overly bureaucratized. It becomes dominated by the middle, not by the people who actually know what's going on, the best and brightest. I mean, look, Elon got run out of town after 150 days.
I'm amazed he made it that long.
I am too, because he's just not meant for Washington. And so my point is that, to bring it back to Israel got stymied in the intelligence business by Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. By the way, people do not understand when it comes to the Houthis. I keep telling this to people and they look at me like, huh? The Houthis just defeated the U.S. Navy. They defeated an entire carrier group. They sent the carrier, the USS Harry Truman, they sent it fleeing back to Norfolk. Okay? We did not succeed in the mission that President Trump outlined for the U.S. Navy because the Houthis have made themselves anti-fragile. The Houthis have figured out how to harden themselves against U.S. airstrikes, which was our primary mode of attack. They have also figured out how to dish out disproportionate levels of destruction, or to threaten to do so, against what turned out to be very vulnerable U.S. carriers. The carrier is the Navy's primary power projection tool, and the carrier is now the world's most vulnerable weapon system ever. It will, and I said this 48 hours before we pulled out. I told Scott Wood on his show, I said, if Trump keeps at it, we're going to lose a carrier under his watch, and it's going to be to someone like the Houthis in 48 hours.
And Brandon, if you would, just explain to anyone who doesn't, everyone knows what the Navy is and what a carrier is, but I don't think a lot of people realize, the sheer power projection that a carrier, and what a carrier group is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and by the way, the carrier group has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller since the 80s. But and that's not because of technology getting better; it's because we're running out of ships. But the carrier is a nuclear-powered, floating airport. Basically, it's an airbase. Basically, it's mobile, and you can launch all manner of aircraft and helicopters from, and you get within range of an enemy target. And
they're massive too.
There are 5,000 sailors and Marines on board. They're a small city basically. I've had friends who've served. I've been on carriers before. I've been on K1 carrier before, these are modern marvels. These are technological This is like the Battlestar Galactica. Okay, this only at sea instead of in space. This is you would never believe the scale, and we have 12 of them or 11 of them, and they're nuclear powered and they're incredible. But they are primarily a souped up World War II fighting platform. And in the age of drones and anti-access area denial, which is the kind of missile drone capabilities that the Houthis, the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese have in abundance. And so A carrier is very good if it can get within range, launch its planes, and it has a flotilla of other ships, sometimes, usually operating alongside it, known as a battle group. Usually you have Arleigh Burke class cruisers or destroyers, and they kind of form like a fighter, like a screen around, they create a shield basically around there you go, around the carrier. As it turns out, the carrier strike groups have been getting smaller and smaller. Britons are a joke. They don't really have a carrier strike group, even though they have 2 carriers today. But because our shipbuilding has been declining steadily since the 80s. So these carriers are more and more vulnerable. What's more, even with a full battle group as pictured here in this image you have up, the Houthis learned from the Iranians, who learned from the Chinese and the Russians, that you can overwhelm any American defense system, like the Aegis defense system, which is the system that defends the carriers from incoming missile attacks. You can overwhelm them with just sheer numbers. And the Houthis have a seemingly limitless supply of increasingly advanced Iranian replicated, which again are derived from Russian and Chinese systems, Iranian replicated anti-ship ballistic missiles. They also notably have what's known as the Palestine II system. This is a clone of Iran's Fatah 1. I want to say Fatah 1. Which is a hypersonic weapon. The United States presently lacks, we do not have hypersonic weapons.
Hypersonic missiles. Okay, got it.
Yeah, hypersonic missiles.
Just so everyone knows, like I always tell people, if they're new here, I'm listening to Brandon, but I'm self-producing and pulling this stuff as he's talking.
Yeah. And so what happened was when Trump decided to pull the Truman out and kind of, I don't want to say surrender, but sort of just walk away from the fight with the Houthis. That was after the Houthis fired a hypersonic weapon. Yeah, there you go, the Palestine II. That was after they fired one of those weapons at Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport and blew up, I think, the runway or somewhere near the runway there. And that was a clear signal to Trump that if you keep floating around taking shots at us with your air power, we're going to fire this at your carrier and we're going to sink it. And yeah, you may kill us, but God will protect us, and we're going to take out your carriers.
So is it because of the hypersonic nature of this, it can make it through that whole net of defense around the carrier?
There is no active air defense system. They think they might be able to get the terminal high altitude area defense, the THAAD. They think they might on a good day be able to get it to track an incoming hypersonic weapon. But the thing about a hypersonic, and I think we've talked about this before, is yes, it's really fast, but what really makes hypersonics dangerous is on their way down to target, they just sort of radically maneuver. That makes it impossible for existing air defense systems to track and then engage. So
why hasn't anyone attacked the U.S. with all? I mean, it seems like we're naked.
I think they're getting ready to. I think it's coming. And I can tell you right now, we've lost, let's just go through the numbers. We've lost Iraq war. We lost to the Taliban. We've lost to the Houthis. And we're about to lose to Russia and Ukraine, or at least our proxies are. And I think countries like China are taking notes and saying we can handle the Americans.
Now's the time.
I can tell you right now, I said this to you last time, I have a lot of Russian friends who are, they're close to the Kremlin. And they communicate with me over Signal. And I even sometimes go on their shows in Russia, RT, and I don't really care what people say. I go on RT. I don't care. I don't say anything that I wouldn't say here. In fact, they let, they're actually very good hosts. They let their guests talk, and they don't actually.
We used to. RT was fine up until 2021. 5 minutes
ago, right?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, so the Russians tell me, and they've said this for 2 years now, Brandon, we have held off the combined forces of NATO and haven't lost any territory in Ukraine. We no longer fear NATO, and obviously, from a deterrent standpoint, deterrence is based on fear. The fear that the enemy can equally or even greater attack you, so you better not mess with me. Well, that fear is gone. So the core component of deterrence, which has been the cornerstone of U.S. grand strategy since the Cold War, deterrence is gone. And what that means is, and this is one of the few things I agreed with Rumsfeld on. He used to say weakness is provocative and strength deters. So right now,
Totally.
the enemy knows, our enemies understand that our deterrence, at the very least, has critical gaps in it. And so what they're going to do now is they're going to probe forward with steel bayonets, hitting mush, and stop only when they hit steel. And the problem is they're probably not going to hit steel for a while because we've blown everything in Ukraine, in the Middle East.
But wait a minute, Brandon. Yeah. Thank God we have Ukraine holding them back.
That's what, yeah. If you look at what's going on right now in the last 48 hours in Ukraine, they're not holding anything back. It's over. And Zelensky knows it. This is why he's crying right now on Ukrainian TV, blaming Trump for everything.
That's okay. So that's why legacy media has not had one Ukraine story up in the last week.
They're getting their asses kicked right now. It is epic, the amount of ass kicking going on.
Whoa.
And what I said on Twitter today, and I got a lot of NAFO idiots getting on me, so I always know I'm onto something when they pop up out of nowhere with their bot on.
I know, aren't they? They're always so reliable intel sources.
Yes, it's like, oh, thanks for confirming what I suspected. So I said that, clearly it shows two things. This new offensive that Russia's doing, it shows A, that Putin has been holding back the whole time, to his own political detriment, by the way, which leads to B. Actually,
why was he holding back?
Well, I think you and I talked about this before, but I'll say it again. Putin views Ukraine as a cultural icon in the new Russian Empire.
Right. Okay. No, I remember this. Yeah.
And so he will destroy it if he has to, but he would really rather not, because remember, Kyiv is the cultural cradle from whence Russian culture sprang from. So for Putin, destroying Kyiv is sort of like us destroying Rome. It's just we do it if we have to, but we'd rather not. The best comparison is Monte Cassino in World War II. Remember, in Italy, there was the beautiful abbey that was there, and Omar Bradley avoided destroying it for many months, even though it killed many American troops, many GIs, and finally, I think it was Patton who came in and goes, "Just blow it up." But it took weeks and months for us to finally turn it into rubble, because the Germans were so entrenched there, and it was such an icon of Catholicism. That's how I look at the way the Russians look at Kyiv. So, but they will destroy it if they have to, and they're starting to. They just unleashed holy hell. But that leads to my second point about Putin, which is clearly he is the most rational actor of any of the major world leaders, because he has avoided escalation with NATO directly, even when he very easily could have had it, and he would have had complete support from his people. Because let's face it, we know Americans have helped to kill Russians for the last 3 years in this war, directly, not just indirectly.
And Brandon, just so I pull up the right tweet, which tweet do you want me to pull up? Because I have you up.
There's so many. I wouldn't even. There's too many.
You have a lot of tweets. You have a lot of them, but
Today was in Israel every day, and I was all over the place with it. And
I never realized how active.
Only on days like today. Only on days like today, when there's a breaking news day today, and national interest wants me to hold off because they want to wait for more info, I'll start spilling stuff on Twitter.
Got it.
So, but it would be from way earlier today. There's one.
Is that the one?
No, that's one of them. Yeah. But my point.
By the way, your interaction with the trolls is hilarious.
Thank you.
I like my favorite one was when Lutnick put out "The wait is over" and he pronounces the Trump card, and your response is what? Like, what is going? Do you not look out the window? Have you seen the world?
Right.
Matt, is now the right time for that tweet?
Right. Exactly. It's exactly, you got it. Yeah. But when we talk about these systems, and so with Israel, they actually have not really won any of the wars they've been getting into since October 7th. They pulled out of Gaza, claimed it was a win. But when you actually look, again, I talked to a lot of Israelis. Okay. And I had a former Mossad guy, or Israeli intelligence, but he's Mossad, former Mossad guy telling me the assessment of Israel's intelligence services was, before the war began, before 10/7, it was 20 to 30,000 Hamas fighters in Gaza. And they believed that when the first round of fighting concluded and they pulled out and started focusing on Hezbollah and going after Syria, they believed they had clipped anywhere from 2 to 3,000 Hamas fighters. That is not a victory. If your goal is the complete destruction of Hamas, that's not the complete destruction. That's not even half of the destruction of Hamas. Then this guy said to me, this guy told me right before Israel went back in the last month, he said the assessment of Israeli intelligence was the Hamas had reconstituted their forces to pre-war levels. So basically, in terms of numbers, now this is what he said. This was in terms of numbers, and he was saying we don't know about the capability of the fighters themselves. They might not be, a lot of them are new, so they might not be as good as the previous ones that we whacked. But the point is that their assessment was basically that this was sort of like mowing the grass. They went in, they got some people, and they made a big show, and then they went home, and Hamas was still there, and they reconstituted. And so now Israel's going in with a plan to stay, and occupying a heavily insurgent area is probably never a smart idea for a democracy, especially a country that, as powerful as Israel's military has been in the past, it's a relatively small military. They cannot possibly. And now you've got the airborne.
How big is it? I mean, just combat troops, if you had to guess.
You can look it up. I don't know off the top of my head. I know they're deploying. They called up 60,000 guys to go into Gaza, which is hardly enough.
So I mean, according to DNI.gov, Hamas has 30,000 fighters.
Yeah, that's the numbers that Israel's been playing with. It is about 30,000. 20 to 30 is what I've heard. 20 to 30. They never give.
That's like a division and a half.
Yeah,
that's huge. I didn't realize they were. I didn't realize they were that big.
When you have to remember what happened was in 2016, the Iranians stepped in because remember Hamas is a Sunni Arab Islamist group. The Iranian regime is a Shiite Islamist ethnic Persian group. So there's a lot of division between the two sides. But
so for those that don't know, just really quickly, because I always want people to guess. So Shiite is, the leader of Islam, right? Should be related distantly to Muhammad, whereas the Sunni side, they believe it should be an elected process, correct?
The most holy, regardless of whether they're related or not, basically.
Which is an elected
And I believe Sunni means jurist. I believe I might be wrong about
means
that.
what?
I thought that the reason they called themselves Sunnis was because it meant jurist, like decision maker.
I thought you said tourist.
No. Well, technically they are colonizers, so they are tourists in most of the lands that they take over. Anyway, so. The Israelis have a real problem in that they've expended all this resources. They have a finite manpower. They do not have limitless manpower. They're surrounded on all sides by rivals. They've pissed off the Egyptians, by the way. So now they can't count on Egypt being on their side the way they could before. Jordan is running the other way from them. So they have a big problem in Jerusalem right now because they are a teeny tiny country, and this isn't like before. Everybody I talk to says, well, they went 3-sided war. It's what they've, God's on their side. And I said, look, regardless of whether God's on their side, the fact of the matter, the armies they were facing back then were, as Kenneth Pollock calls them, Arab armies of sand. Okay, you're talking about hardened insurgencies that are well funded. They have a lot of battlefield experience. This is a totally different animal you're dealing with, and they hide.
And back then they didn't know anything about combined warfare. They couldn't decide on who would run what army. They had no control over the irregulars.
That's right.
It was just a big clusterfuck. Basically.
That's right. Go back to Iraq, our experience, right? We cut through Saddam's army like butter, but then those guys folded away and helped to form the insurgency, and it was a totally different experience. It was.
And that's what happens, and that's what people really need to understand about the face of warfare today. Is that. And the Chinese predicted this. They've retooled everything that way, where like you fade back in. It's like when we went to the southern Philippines to go hunt the dreaded Abu Sayyaf group, which at its max was like 80 people. I think the only reason like we targeted them, they sounded more Islamic than the.
I don't know. You tell me.
The MILF.
Oh, right. That's right. You told me that joke before. That's right.
And
Right,
you
right,
didn't
right,
believe
right.
me. The Moro
Moros. Yeah,
Islamic
the Moros.
Liberation Front.
Yeah. That's funny.
But 3,200 people with an order of battle and a very, very organized
Right.
logistics. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, as you know, we do this big show of landing. You know, you got the Green Berets with the
Right.
RoboCop looking gear
Right.
on that no one had ever seen before back
Right.
then.
That's right.
And you know what the Abu Sayyaf did? They just kind of faded into the population.
right.
They're like, we'll wait this one out.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of these countries, they have a history of that and they're better at it. So one of the things we saw in Vietnam, I'm fascinated by Vietnam. One of the things we saw was toward the end of the war, the Viet Cong actually, people don't realize this, the Viet Cong actually got slaughtered, which was the irregular force. They actually got slaughtered in Tet. Tet was actually a strategic defeat or a tactical defeat rather.
Never heard that before.
Yeah,
Okay.
47 or 48% of all Viet Cong forces in South Vietnam took part in Tet, and they were either massacred by us or they were captured. What happened was at that point in the war, the transition started happening to NVA regulars. But what we saw was that it was becoming easier for us to kill the Vietnamese in their regular formations than it was when they were insurgents. The problem was by that point in the war, and the Vietnamese knew this, the North Vietnamese, by that point in the war, America had become so demoralized, we weren't going to support another 3 or 4 years to take on the regular forces. We were done. And so my point here with that is there are some countries and some groups of people like the Arabs, like the Islamists, who are extremely proficient at guerrilla warfare. And a military like Israel is not going to be able to handle a counterterrorism or counterinsurgency like that. If I were the Israelis, I'd be contacting the Colombians and trying to figure out how they were so effective, at least until recently, for 50 years at dealing in counterinsurgency methods, because
It's
they're not going
amazing.
to learn it from the Americans.
You know, it seems like success is the worst enemy of like tactical superiority or
Yeah.
strategic superiority. Like
Yeah.
I mean, it happened to the Romans. Like I mean, you know the story of Alaric, right? Where
Yeah.
with the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And I love the way it's told in How the Irish Saved Civilization. You know, a lot of paraphrasing, but basically, Alaric, he was in charge of what, like the Ostrogoths or the Visigoths? I forgot which.
I think it was Visigoths.
Visigoths.
Yeah,
And so the Western barbarians, and
Mhm.
you know they would show up, and as the Thomas Cahill says in How the Irish Saved Civilization, they called them the Romans would refer to them as the fuzzy wuzzies, you know, in old Latin, whatever that was. But they would show up every year and you know demand food and everything, and they'd send the emissaries out from Rome, and they'd say, "Okay, here you go away now, be gone."
Right.
When Alaric showed up, he basically said, "Nah, that's not good enough." And they said,
Right.
"Well,
He wanted
what
respect.
do you?" But what you know, point of my story is like how complacent the Romans had gotten.
And that's
And
the story
he
of
said-
Israel.
Oh no, he didn't want respect. He wanted it all. He
Right, well,
said
of
to
course.
them, he said to them, they're like, "Well, what will it take to make you leave with your horde of barbarians?" And he said, "Tell you what," he goes, "we want to come through, storm Rome. We're going to take all of your women, all of your slaves, all of your gold, all of your resources. We're taking all of that stuff. That's what we want." And the emissary said, "What does that leave us with?" He said, "Your lives."
Right. Right.
And that
Yeah.
was the fall of Rome.
And what people need to realize is with Israel, for the last several years before 10/7, the mowing the grass strategy is what they called it ruefully in Israeli military circles. Basically, every so often Israel would wake up and kind of blow up some known missile caches, weapons caches. They clipped some Hamas guys, but primarily they left Hamas alone. And what was going on behind the scenes, this is not widely known, Netanyahu's policy was to pay Hamas off, was to bribe them to keep quiet. And
I think they were giving them weapons too.
they might have been giving them weapons too. I don't know, but I know they were definitely giving them money. And the
I'm
thing
just saying on October 7th, a lot of those weapons that were pictured, actually, Jim Hoft at Gateway Pundit called me that morning, October 8th, and he's like, "Hey, is this an Israeli weapon?" He's sending me all these photos. I was like, "Yeah, that's Israeli."
Well, I have another crazy one for you.
Go ahead.
Hamas on October 7th were also sporting a lot of American weapons that might have been given to them by the Taliban.
I saw them.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So
It makes sense. And back to
and-
that Taliban thing when we were talking about that years ago now.
Yeah, with the way they were
Remember I
holding,
pointed out to you that
holding the gun.
well, no, not only the way they're holding the gun.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
dude,
It's
let's
tucked
face
in-
the facts.
tucked in
Now,
like
let's face the facts. Those people in the American uniforms were the Afghani Defense Force.
That's right. That's
Because
100
you did
100%.
not see any bodies burning. They weren't putting any Afghani Defense Force and that was, people don't realize this isn't like some guys in the desert that
Right.
are special forces trained to be insurgents. This was a full-blown army with ceremonies, uniforms,
Yep.
halls. I mean, it was huge. And they just disappeared. But all of a sudden you have,
after we abandoned Bagram was when everything folded away.
and
Yeah.
I had never, to this day, I have not seen one body
Yep.
of the Afghan Defense Force displayed by the Taliban. And oh, by the way,
They're
we
working
don't
for 'em
talk
now.
about ISIS-K anymore
Yeah,
Because-
some people do.
because they're idiots.
Some people.
Well, I
Some of
remember
your-
Anthony
some of your
Blinken.
former colleagues at CIA are.
Oh, I know they suck.
I have a couple here who are insistent that ISIS-K is in the country now, getting ready to launch attacks during these riots.
Right, of course. I mean, they actually might be because, according to Anthony Blinken in July of 2020, when was he? 21? When did
August
Afghanistan
2021.
fell?
August
so
21.
in July of 2021, Anthony Blinken, in an official document that I still have at the State Department, said the Khorasan group, which was what ISIS-K was,
Right.
is no longer a threat. They've moved most of their operations to North Africa.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, we have Anthony Blinken saying, oh my God, the ISIS-K, which is the other name of Khorasan group, has moved. They're just sweeping across Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ISIS-K is a dusted off bullshit puppet that you guys are you're making this up.
Remember, ISIS-K was the group in 2017 Trump dropped the Moab on in Afghanistan.
Yes.
So
And
this has been a,
don't forget they come out of Syria. At best, it was 68.
That's right.
It was 68 like ISIS, not even ISIS, Al-Qaeda veterans.
Right. That's right.
So they're not like spring chickens who, came from Syria. They were, what was his name? The planner that they caught from Syria back in the Al-Qaeda days.
The bomb maker?
Yeah.
Not Ramsey.
Not Ramsey.
Ramsey Al-Yusuf? No.
No. He's very well-known name. I just having a brain freeze right now. I've been on all day. But
Not
the
Khalid
thing
Sheikh
is,
Mohammed.
nope.
No.
He always. I'll look it up. I'll put in the definition. But the point is, they were not a threat, and then all of a sudden, because the United States knew that they can't have the American under Biden. They knew they couldn't have the American people against Taliban. Why?
Right, because they were making a deal with them.
Well, not only that, we're going to ship them into this country, and they already made a deal with China.
Right.
And Taliban basically provides the access and the security to Chinese geologists so they could keep on mining the hell out of those semi-precious minerals.
Gave them Bagram.
Yes, they gave them the whole country. So the point is, like, you got Blinken saying, oh, ISIS-K is not a thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, ISIS-K. And do you remember in 2021, the Biden administration was actually trying to get the American people to cheer for the Taliban?
Yeah, I do. I remember that. Well, this is, by the way,
This
was a Joe Biden thing in the Obama years, because when Obama was talking about drawing down, I don't know if you remember this, Bob Woodward talks about this in the book Obama's Wars.
Woodward? When he's not talking about deep throat?
I believe this is true because I've heard Biden say this when Biden was a senator. He would talk like this too. Biden used to say, there's a difference between Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and we can do business with the Taliban.
Oh my God, no, I never heard this.
Oh, this goes back 20 years at least. This was a consistent talking point of Team Biden going back to 2008 or 9. Okay, this was a consistent point. This is Anthony Blinken, because Anthony Blinken, people don't realize, has been with Biden since the beginning. So for 20 years, he's
Oh,
been
yeah,
with
no,
Biden.
I know. Yeah.
This was the brains trust around Biden going back to his Senate days. Oh, there's a difference between the Taliban and Al Qaeda. We could do business with one, but not the other. Yeah. So
Do you know Blinken has a garage band?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Do you know the name of it?
The Losers.
No, you know what the name of it is? This will
No, I
piss
don't.
you off. Abe Lincoln.
Oh, for God's sake. And then we wonder why, like, no other country takes us seriously when that guy was
Abe
already
Lincoln,
adopted.
man.
Meanwhile, Russia has Sergei Lavrov, who's like one of the most proficient diplomats in the world. They will write histories about him. It's just what an embarrassment.
That really threw you, right? The Abe Lincoln thing.
The Abe
What
Lincoln.
What a
Lincoln
dick,
and Blinken.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, but I mean, let me try to get us way back on a target here. Let's talk about Iran, and I know it all circles. You think the way I do. You must have some Irish in there because
I do.
We want to give you the full context.
Yeah.
This is why I love having you on because we can go for hours. But
let's
pivot here. Let's pivot here for a lot of people. And by the way, everyone, definitely check out We the Brandon. It's at We the Brandon. His links are on there. Check it out. Follow this man. Listen to everything he says. You don't have to believe it. Do your own research, of course. That's why he's, what we call the Rain Man of geopolitics. I know he hates that, but the thing is,
she's tall.
Keep an eye on what he's saying because, Brandon's only, his only motivation, he doesn't have an agenda. I know everyone he works for. I'm friends with one of his employers. Yeah. He will never be rich. And why will he never be rich unless he gets out of this business of media and sharing the truth? He'll never be rich because he refuses to get in any camp but the truth. Right. And by camps, I mean anyone that knows DC. There's a few camps. Let's lay them out. Tell me if I miss any. There's the Israeli camp.
Definitely.
There's the Qatari camp.
Definitely.
There's the Turkey camp.
Definitely.
There's the Russia camp.
Not as powerful, though. The Russia camp
not as powerful, but if you're in the China camp, you get Russia camp as a bonus membership.
And Turkey sometimes, too. Yeah.
Well, Turkey, they're kind of like,
then you also have to remember you've got multinational firms. You've got the corporatists. You've got,
you got the Chevron camp.
You got the I can't talk about
Hello, Kim Iverson. But anyways, did I say that out loud? I say that out loud.
Caroline Run, too. That's going down tonight, from what I understand. So,
wait,
anyway,
what do you mean? Whoa,
offline.
Don't bury the lead.
It's not my story to break. I'll tell you offline.
Wait,
I'll tell you offline. It's not my story to break.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
might be time for a commercial break. But all right, so let's shift it back. You said something really interesting in the beginning of this. So we're on the brink of war with Iran. I'm scared to even check like the latest updates. But you mentioned something that I've been covering all week, and the reason why I wasn't up on Iran is because I literally was streaming KCAL, LA local CBS, and by the way, I got this like nasty gram from a conservative who said, KCAL, dude, I'm out. CBS, what are you thinking? I'm like, they're the only ones doing an unbroken stream.
Yeah.
I don't care who's doing it. Like, I don't want to hear Jack Posobiec or anyone else telling me their opinion on things. I just want to watch it.
Yeah. No, I got it. I'm with you. I reference, if I think it's a legit thing they're saying, I'll reference Al Jazeera, and I hate Al Jazeera. RT, I'll reference RT if they've got a good story, and I think it's and I can corroborate it.
I'll go with it. I will watch CNN if they're the ones giving me a live feed.
I agree, especially for this. Yep. Absolutely. I think that.
Let me lead you in here. Let me give you a landing point. So Brandon said earlier, he thinks somehow these LA riots and maybe the No Kings things I was talking about today might be related to Iran as a distraction or what. Tell us what you think about that.
Oh, I think that definitely there's what's known as the red-green axis, and that is the communist Islamist coalition It is a real alliance. We know for a fact it's real in Europe and in Britain. I think it's real here now too. This goes back to the Holy Land Foundation and the FBI investigations into the 90s into these groups that were funding Al Qaeda and terrorism in the United States. So I believe that there are a coterie of foreign interests, including the Mexican government and the Venezuelan government, funding and participating and encouraging these riots in our streets to destabilize the United States and to basically make the United States ungovernable long enough to either affect some kind of a regime change here, or more likely to keep us so bogged down at home we can't respond to these foreign threats. And I don't believe, by the way, we should be involved in a Middle East war. I think it is a grave mistake. But the point is, if we ever needed to do something, what a weird thing going on, having our guys fighting over there while their families are back here, possibly threatened by the Marxist Islamist alliance. Literally threatened, burning cities down.
Right, and it's a distraction. It's a distraction.
It is, yes, and it's coordinated.
So before you go on, I just want to address something really quickly here. So, No Longer Tired, who I love everyone on the show, he says, I get it, talking about the local news, but local reporters in LA give their opinions as they broadcast live. Well, I mean, No Longer Tired, all due respect, if you're listening to those opinions and they have any effect on you, then you need to kind of strengthen the old willpower, because they're idiots, these reporters, and KCAL especially are morons. But what I do is I record it, but their opinions are important in this way. It helps you identify the messaging. Right. Okay, so for instance, the messaging on these riots in LA were mostly peaceful. They actually went back to mostly peaceful. Not only that, the other one, the new key phrase, is rabble rousers. It's not their fault. These rabble rousers, who they never identify, come in. And what I said on Dr. Drew today, and what I've been saying all week, is I believe that the peaceful protesters organized by Indivisible, and make no mistake, No Kings coming this Saturday, that's Indivisible. How do I know, Brandon? Because if you scroll to the bottom of the mobilize.us page for No Kings, it says clearly Indivisible is handling all the communications for that
organization. Freedom Road,
so
another one.
But the point is, you should watch. Look, you're not going to learn anything. No Longer Tired in an echo chamber. I go to Real America's Voice and John Solomon. I like a lot, because there's things that I'm not going to, leads I might not get on the legacy media. But in terms of streaming and all that, I don't care what they're saying, but I do care how they're saying it and what the messaging is, because it helps me identify where the messaging comes from and where it's going to. So that's the thing. And so I just want to address that No Longer Tired. And let me see what he says here. It's such a shame that this is happening. Mexicans are part of the LA. Yeah, that's typical Angelina. That's a talking point that's actually a local talking point. One has nothing to do with the other. It's just, of course, it's propaganda. It's news. All news is propaganda. Even conservative news, even independent podcasts have become propaganda. Make no mistake about it.
The few, yes.
I mean, need I mention the binder bimbos? I won't get into that. Yeah. But that's the thing. So, totally agree. Okay, good. He and again, it's and I'm not meaning to call you out. No Longer Tired. I just want to make sure you know why I was streaming that, because you know what? None of the conservative channels were just streaming it,
right?
Unbroken. What I liked about KCAL okay, I got to give credit. There's one reporter, regardless of her politics, I don't care, because when I watched the footage, I just turned down the sound. But she was out there for 3 nights, and she almost got hit by the guy in the minivan. I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. I don't care if she's a raging Marxist. That's a good soldier on the ground right there. So she's got my respect, totally. But anyways, these are good concerns and comments. And I just quickly, Brandon, want to say hello to Cayman666. You remember him. He's always there.
Yep.
And then you'll appreciate this from No Longer Tired. I've
What's
never
that?
been. He says Monte Cassino. I've never been actually.
I've never
And
been
then,
either, but it's Italy, so I'm sure it's wonderful.
and by the way, no longer tired. Thank you for watching the Dr. Drew show. I love going on the Dr. Drew show. It's always a blast. He makes a joke every time when I go on there. His wife doesn't sleep for days because I just lay it out like Brand. I'm like, oh, here's what they're doing. And I remember the first time I went on the show, Susan Pinsky was like, how can you be so calm about this? I'm like, because I'm an analyst.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's it for the comments, Brandon. So we were talking about the relationship between these. Now, are you familiar with the No Kings protests that are planned?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Okay. And it's the same, I was saying earlier, it's the same old shit. Like it's the same old people. It's the same people that did Ruth Sent Us and BLM, except they've shifted now from Action Network as their CRM or customer resource management platform, which is the app they all use to organize things. Now they've shifted to Mobilize. And I'm guessing when I dive into Mobilize, I'm going to find it's owned by the same people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I suspect a lot of USAID money is washing around in these places, and I'm suspecting my personal view is, though, the geopolitical events cannot be divorced from what's going on right now. All the actors that we're facing globally benefit.
There are no coincidences.
Yes. Well, yes, exactly. And they benefit as much from the chaos here as do the internal enemies of our country. If I were Donald Trump, I would be very conscientious about my personal security on this military parade day.
Big time.
I meant to bring this up earlier, and I'm running out of battery on my laptop, but
okay.
I meant to bring this up
wrap
earlier.
it up.
4.5. So, an imam in the Middle East who is connected with the Islamists, you might have seen it earlier today, Memory reported on it, and John Guandolo has been talking about it. But basically, a very powerful imam called on all 4.5 million Muslim Americans in the midst of these riots to rise up and, in the name of global jihad, assassinate Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And I talked to some people who are counterterrorism experts in the last 24 hours, and they believe that was an activation message. They think there were already sleepers in the country.
Can you get me the link to that? And,
yeah, it should be on my Twitter, but I'll definitely get it to you as soon as I log off. I'll have to find it, but I posted it this morning. But basically, it was time for these riots. And we know there's a large population of Muslims in Washington, D.C., and I know some of them are very militant because I lived there for long enough. In fact, the Falls Church Mosque is legendary.
And a lot of them from East Africa too.
Mm-hmm. And so my point is, we have this, and a friend of mine or a colleague of mine who's a reporter in the White House, her producer was telling us on the Zoom call a couple days ago how the White House was basically being barricaded in anticipation of what they thought were not only going to be the riots, but the response to the military parade. My father-in-law, who lives in D.C., will not be going into work because he was told by his colleagues they suspect the building will be targeted by firebombs. And so, this is DC is going to become a war zone in the next several days, I suspect.
Well, so I'm gonna disagree with you a little on that. I don't think it's going to be a war zone. I think they're going to put it under siege, and I'll tell you why.
That's okay.
Yeah. Because there's not one event planned for DC. They actually state it. They said we're going to do events around DC, but they don't have any events planned.
Yeah, probably because they know the jihadis are planning to do something.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. That's a good point.
I think the jihadis are going to try to take out Trump, and I think if Vance,
so they're going to stay out of the blast zone.
Yeah, because they're working together.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
This is like this is like a Marvel comic book movie where all the villains are now working together and like the anti-Avengers, and they are trying to stop the good guys. And
let's call it what it is. It's indivisible.
Right.
They can't be that stupid because you know what the jihadis do when they're done with the op. What happens to the They're gonna
Right.
slice the throats of indivisible.
You have to understand the Marxists are planning to slice their throats first. They think
Right, but
exactly
I
the
think the
same.
jihadis will be more successful based on the caliber of our
Something
Marxists.
I have learned, though, when it comes to Marxists, is to never underestimate their impetus for violent rage.
Oh no, I don't
They
think anyone
are
underestimates that
they
anymore.
are a scary bunch of people. Remember, Lenin wasn't that physically impressive, and he did quite a bit of killing.
He really did. Yeah.
And so he was an academic, which is probably why he was so petty.
Dude, they are creepy. They're like The Walking Dead. I actually went to a meeting long ago about a pipeline thing back in Virginia, and I went in full name. I just wanted to see what the hell they were talking about, see what they were all about.
Yeah.
And someone looked me up and like, oh my god, he's a private security, blah blah blah. They freaking surrounded me in the lobby, and it was like the way the zombies do in The Walking Dead. And that's like one of their tactics is to mob you. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And one dude, he's wearing like purple camouflage, and he's like, the one dude of color who they all thought was like super tough. And he's like, I want to see your notebook. I said, how about no? And then I told him, I was like, hey, back off, Maze Runner. I'm going to break that jaw, and that was it. But, I knew it was time to leave when I had to make an exit through them. And this is like kind of like these pasty 20-somethings,
and a lot of them come from very wealthy families, and a lot of
just
them
like the Red Guard.
Well, and it's a lot like the Islamists too. Most of the 9/11 hijackers came from very wealthy families or upper middle class. Arafat came from a very upper middle class Egyptian family. This is not well known, but that's what most revolutionaries are. Well educated, they are men of means, and they tend to be the most bitter because they weren't included enough, in their opinion, in elite society. So they're going to create a new elite society by killing the old elites.
Brandon, your battery's going to run out. I have not eaten all day. My dog is barking at a rabbit. And I actually have to fix my drone tonight.
Yep, just be watching Israel. It's going to pop soon.
I wanted to ask you a favor and ask the audience a favor. Pull up this map on nokings.org. Okay, and Brandon made a great point. I hadn't even thought of that. Is that there's nothing planned in D.C. because they're expecting something really bad in DC. And let's not forget also, and a lot of people say, oh, you're just, that's whatever, like alarmist or anything. Be alarmist. Be alarmist.
You have to now. You know what? Real quick, the good friend of mine, you know who he is? Maybe you know him, Dr. Michael Scheuer, former Bin Laden unit. Yeah. So Michael said to me not long ago when I was like, I don't want to be too conspiratorial. He said, Brandon, how do you live in today's world and not understand that conspiracy theories are not just theories anymore? And when the former head of the Bin Laden unit says that, I realize I'm no longer the most paranoid one in the room.
And I was watching World War Z the other night. My son had never seen it because, I'm going to go there,
right?
but
Brad Pitt, right?
But there's I was very sad. I don't know what the hell Brad Pitt was supposed to be, but it was cool. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But he was like Special Forces UN,
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, like in that movie, they had this great. I don't know if it's a real thing. You know Israel better than I do, but Brad Pitt asks the Mossad head. He's like, "Well, how did you know to double the wall guard and all this?" And he said, "Well, look, we have a system called the 10th man, and when everyone agrees on one thing, it's up to the 10th man in the room to choose the most illogical or conspiratorial thing." And so I went with the theory that we're getting attacked by zombies.
Yeah.
And they have to follow the orders of the 10th man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they have to follow them, but that, it's, what is it? Steel manning, I think, or, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, is that a real thing they do? Because if it is, that's what we're doing now is we're kind of like the 10th man in our own heads. There's like 9 Brian saying.
I don't think it's that absurd though. Because if you believe as I do, these groups are working together and they're far more integrated than they're letting on, then why would they not choose the nation's capital? Why would they not try to spoil Trump's birthday party and the birthday of
they have one event. You see it?
Yeah.
Just one event planned.
Something's going down.
Something's, and it's at 4 p.m. That's long after the parade. But if you
Something-
look all around it, and now they claim they explain this. They claim that they don't want to bring attention to the military parade. I'm like,
right.
I'm glad you brought that up because it wasn't sitting well with me. Like,
doesn't
this
make any
seems
sense.
like bullshit. They always want attention.
As I say, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
You're the 10th man, unfortunately, Brandon.
I usually am. I'm a red teamer. I've always been.
That's right. God, I haven't heard that term in a long time, brother. Let's call it a night. Are you available tomorrow? If you are, I'm going to be live streaming sporadically. I'll send you a link.
I'll
send you a link.
I'll try. I don't know.
And if you see me on Twitter, just hop on.
But if if Israel pops off, I'm going to be talking about that the whole time because this
Totally understand. Understand.
All right, sir.
So, and by the way, Brandon, I'm actually I've attended all of my ACLU training. Who's providing the training for these riots?
Good.
So I attended how your legal rights training last night.
Good.
Earlier this evening, I attended Marshall's training.
Oh, good.
Marshall's, by the way, if you saw the people dressed like construction workers at the LA riots, those are marshals.
Yes.
So what they're the points of contact, and then they also have undercover security. How do I know this? The ACLU is providing all of the training for these No Kings protests. They have these live streams that you can get invited to. Here's the other one. Harvard is doing the crowd count.
Of course. Well, they're very angry. They lost their funding.
Donald Trump, understand that Harvard is working with the No Kings rally. Just want to put that out there.
The best and brightest.
Yeah, and I know he's suing them and he hates them, so I'm just letting him know.
Defunding them? I mean, he's threatening to at least.
Well, I'm just saying keep the defunding in place because he's and let me close with this, and Brandon, I'm going to give you the last word. You know, I was on with DC Drano today. You know, really interesting conversation. And he made a good point. We're winning. We're winning this battle. We are not winning the war because the war always goes on, just like the Marxist revolution. So what I would tell people is you have to constantly fight. We as humans, I think, are in a perpetual state of warfare with each other, and we always will be to the day we die. So never think at all that any war is won. Wars never end. They just get quiet, and they change in terms of volume. But remember, when you look at like these protests, when you look at, by the way, these same Indivisible did all the Tesla takedown ones where they were dropping Molotov cocktails on Teslas. Okay. Marxists never stop. They see victory as gaining a yard every 10 years. We see victory as smiting the enemy. And just like the USSR, remember, we thought we'd killed communism when we took down the USSR. Actually, in my opinion, China took down the USSR. But, you know, we could debate about that another time, Brandon. But the thing is, we thought communism was dead when the wall came down. Okay? Communism is like cockroaches. They never die. They keep coming and reproducing. So just always remember, take a vacation, but only take it one that's like 60% leisure, and always be 40% vigilant on vacation and 100% vigilant in your day-to-day. Brandon. And look, I'm going to move you to the left.
Yes, and I would I would just say that we need to avoid a major war. Trump cannot get mired into any major conflict abroad. He needs to focus on the home front. If we do get into a war, and I think the Middle East is going to be the thing that brings us in again, that could very well be the end of MAGA, because there's no way he's going to be able to wage that kind of a war and take care of the mess at home. It's one or the other. So let's hope that he can make the right moves.
Well, guys, everyone, again, thank you, Brandon, for coming on. Remember, you go to We the Brandon. Let me put that up again. There we go. I'm getting better at this, Brandon. Look at that. Look at me move. Here we go. Okay, there he is. Make sure you follow him. You don't want to miss a word this man says, because it's all important. He is my friend, but he became my friend because I reached out to him blindly on Twitter, and he got back to me. We had conversation like this, and so we just decided to turn on the camera one day. But definitely check out all his books. You will learn so much. Why is what Brandon has to say important? Because history really does repeat itself, and one thing about this man's career is he's captured that in all of his books, and he spans the different topics of geopolitics. You can see right there: winning space, Iran, China. Okay, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to like it. And he's a great writer. It's like, I fly through your books, and I never fly through any books in this category. So, Brandon, thanks again.
I try. Thank you.
You're very good. And thank you so much. And by the way, he's doing all this while he has like a million kids at home, and, not a million, but he's a new dad, a young dad.
Yep.
He's got 3.
Yep.
And he's got a new one.
Yep.
And, he always makes time to share with you his knowledge so you know what to recognize as the threat. So thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. I'm going to go because I've got 2% now.
All right. Well, I will talk to you later. Everyone else, stay on. I'm going to leave you with the full 14-minute car chase of the minivan that everyone thinks was doing donuts. It was doing a lot more than that. So, Brandon, his battery died. But I'm going to leave you with that. So some of you might recall that during the LA riots, there was a minivan and the guy was arrested. I don't know the status of it. I'm going to leave you with, I recorded live when that was happening. I was watching it live. The full 10 minutes of that minivan. Not making any assumptions who the minivan was. Just want to hear your thoughts about it tomorrow or the next day when I'm back on. But everyone watches as I'm going to sign off for the evening. I'm going to leave you with the minivan chase. Give me just a second to call it up. If you have comments, now's the time to drop them so I can see them. Otherwise, I'm going to go. And before I go, actually, definitely, I say it every time. If you're working these late nights like I am, what gets me through it is Native Path, is my collagen and my Native Hydrate. I love my Native Hydrate. So check out the banner below as soon as I put it up. There we go. Get Native Path right there. Go to Get Native Path. They have so many great products. They have magnesium to help you sleep. Native Hydrate, the hours I work. I wake up, I pound the Native Hydrate. And by the way, Native Path, I'm empty. I'm a sponsor. Maybe you could throw me a few more samples, but if not, I'm going to have to buy them. They do have subscriptions, so you don't run out like I'm about to. And here's the thing. I got a 13-year-old football star, and he doesn't drink Gatorade anymore. He's actually drinking the Native Path, Native Hydrate. Also, the collagen is wonderful. I've added collagen to my diet. I'm not balding anymore, and I'm not aching anymore. And maybe it's just divine intervention, or maybe it's collagen intervention, whatever. But the thing is, these things are part of my diet. So go to Get Native Path and use promo Get Native Path /Daily Clout and stock up on the collagen. Get as strong as you can, because it's going to be a hell of a summer. And I don't mean that in a good way. I hope it's a good way, but it's probably not going to be based on all the things that we're laying out. And what's ironic, I'll say this one thing. Dr. Drew's wife, Susan Pinsky, who's his producer, every time I go on their show, she's like, oh my God, after the stuff Brian tells me, I'm not going to sleep for the next two weeks because they say it's terrifying. I'm that same way with Brandon. Brandon is so meticulous in his research. If he says something's happening, there's a good chance it's going to happen. Why does he want to share that with you? So when shit is going down, like, okay, I need to do something hopefully beforehand. That's the whole point of this show. Hopefully to intervene, to spot the semi-trailer truck in the woods that might be launching 25 attack drones. But we share everything we know. I don't pay him. I don't get paid. We just want to share this because we have the knowledge, so why keep it to ourselves? Because if we're all fighting and we're all defending, we're all stronger together. And I don't mean that in a communist way. I mean that in a patriotic way. So, tune into it and get Brandon's books. They're great. They're awesome. I'm fortunate enough where he sent me a couple of them, but then I insisted on buying the last few because he's a writer and that's how he supports himself. So I'm totally happy to do that, and they're totally worth it. And you can find all his stuff on Amazon or all your major booksellers. All right, guys. And also, because I do so much of this, I have to ask, if you look below, you'll see at the scroll, givesendgo.com /investigate everything. I literally do this for free. I'm going to finance myself going downtown in Boston. I need to rent a van, and I need to get close to all these protests. If you have it in your, budget or anything, please give to this show. This is how we keep it free. This is how we do it. The sponsors I talk about, they support Daily Clout. As far as me, my wife owns the platform, and I'm here basically to share what I know to help her business. But when it comes to, tactical operations, things I need to do in the field, I'm kind of funding that out of my own pocket. Yes, I have a few clients, but it makes for a long day. So if you appreciate the show, you want to keep it free, by all means, please give what you can at givesendgo.com/investigate everything. And by the way, everything you give to Investigate Everything on Give Send Go goes towards tactical actions that end up on the show. It just helps me fund them. So I really appreciate it in advance. If you can't totally understand, there's a little tab there. If you can afford it, you don't have the budget, I get it. Trust me, I'm there now. You can send a prayer. And as long as that's good too, because in the end, you can't take it with you. So one or the other, donate what you can. And if you can't donate, then donate a prayer. I appreciate that. Thank you for watching. I'm going to leave you with the van video, which I still haven't called up. Sorry, guys, but it won't take long. Give me just a second here. Okay, go to LA Riots. I wish I could show you my screen when I'm doing this because you would understand the frustration of these. I need like 5 more screens. But let me get this up here. Okay. LA Riots. Episodes. There we go. In the meantime, where are my LA Riots? I cannot find it. Sorry, guys. Hold on. I should have had this ready. And again, I actually wasn't even planning on going on tonight. Oh, they're there. Okay, good. Okay, good. I got it. Brandon texted me. So he actually, I was pretty impressed. He wanted to make sure you guys knew about this stuff so much. He's like, hey, do you have time for a podcast? And I was like, sure, mine or someone else's. He's like, yours. I got to get on there because I have to get this information out. So I really appreciate that about him. He's truly there, man. All right, so let me get to that folder now that I found it. There we go. All right, so this video is the full. I recorded this when it was live. This was not a replay. So this is a really intense situation. So we are on the corner of. I'm just going to pause that, but I'm going to leave you with that. Why is this important? Because I'm just curious. I don't know. I'm just curious why no one's chasing this minivan. You'll see it. By the way, this is the girl who I give her mad respect. She's out there in the thick of it for 3 days straight, nonstop, while the other people at KCAL are in the studio. So I don't care what her politics are. I respect anyone who gets on the street and puts himself in the face of danger. She's trying to report the news. She can't control what her network does. So she's a foot soldier. So from one foot soldier to another, whatever her name is, I salute her. Anyways, this is, for those that don't know, this was on the 9th, which is, it's like, well, I saved it on the 9th, but basically there was a minivan that started doing cookies. Now, you probably all saw it on social media where all they show is this guy doing like backwards cookies and people are throwing bricks at him. But what you don't see is the other, it's like 14 minutes long. And what's weird about it to me, I don't want to bias you, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts right now. What's weird to me is if you've ever seen Cops or any high-speed car chase live on the news, hey, Ernie, how's it going? Good to see you. Blue Wolf, good to see you. Stop calling me a guy, LOL. No longer tired. I'm so sorry I called you a guy. That is, honestly, I call everyone guys. I say you guys. I say to my wife and her daughter, you guys. So that, but again, that's why I say you guys, but I do apologize. No longer tired. Gotcha. So, thank you both for having this discussion. I learned a lot. Yeah, no longer tired, madam. Yeah, Brandon is a wealth of knowledge. I'm so lucky to have him as a friend. But what I want to show you here is what was weird about this guy is going everywhere. Now, what I also noticed is that except for a bicycle, he never really hits anything. Now, I remember a long time ago, I knew a girl that worked at Secret Service. She was a trainer, and she gave me access to their academy one day. So I got to tool around and look at the old weapons lockers and everything. But I also got to ride along with the driving instructors. These two old guys, they're pretty old, and not old, but they were gray-haired and pretty, pretty comfortable, I'll put it that way. And they're sitting there and they're driving with one hand on the closed course, and they're doing they're going super fast, hitting these corners. And I'm sitting there, I'm holding on to what they call the wuss bar because I tried to be cool, but I was terrified. They drive so fast around corners and they don't hit a thing. I've never seen anyone drive like this minivan guy drives. He's either a race car driver, super lucky, or well-trained. I've never seen anyone drive like him except for cops, Secret Service, and certain federal people and race car drivers. Now, I went on a space the other night and everyone was dismissive. They're like, it's just some meth head. But clearly they only saw the 54-second donut clip. Watch this whole clip. I'm not coming back on after that. I'm going to close out with this. Want your thoughts on the next show, and I will I'll post this in Rumble so you can have the link to it so you can download the video and analyze it for yourself. Something, I don't know. Here's my thoughts on the minivan guy. I think he was there to keep the crowd going, keep them excited, keep them violent. That's what I think. Because at the very end of it, you'll see he stops and then he's very calmly trying to switch vehicles. But remember the KCAL, this news station's camera was on him while he's doing that, and then the cops come in and they arrest him, but it's kind of a gentle arrest for a guy that was supposedly on a high-speed chase. And it almost seems like he's waiting for them to arrest him. So I don't know what that is. It's weird, it's strange, but I want you to check it out. I want you to have it. You can record the screen, whatever, but you'll have a link. I have this downloaded on a Western Digital, but here it is for you. And again, I think this was Sunday night. This is Saturday night in LA. So have a great night. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon, and enjoy.
Yeah, so this is a really intense situation. So we are on the corner of, this is Main, and what is this? Mojo, do you know what this is? I'm sorry, I don't know, but we are right near the Chevron station. Oh, it's Cesar Chavez and Main, and things are really out of control. You can see a group of kids now are throwing rocks. I think they're about to go into this Chevron and take it over. They've been throwing rocks at passing cars. There's a car on fire about maybe 100 yards from where we are, maybe 50 yards from where we are. Ooh. I don't know what's going on here, but
let's go to the chopper.
I think the police are headed here because they see that.
Yeah, someone is doing donuts in the middle of the roadway there, a minivan.
And they're throwing rocks at the minivan.
Yes, and they're about to overtake this Chevron, I believe, because they've been throwing rocks and such into it, trying to break into it. This is a much younger crowd, I will note, a much younger crowd than the crowd that we first encountered when we first got on the scene with the demonstrators. A lot of amped up young teenagers around here and young
Look at that van.
There is a minivan, Lori, that we're keeping our eye on that was doing donuts in reverse and now is driving very erratically. That person also throwing things out of the window. Take a look. They're trying to make their way into the Placita Olvera Street area. And this could be a very dangerous situation. We don't know who is behind the wheel of this minivan here or what their intentions are.
Oh, you know what?
That is
can you
Olvera
go
Street.
back? Can you guys? Right. Can you guys see? Can you see the fire? Can you see the car on fire in the middle of the road?
It's a trash.
Oh, it's a trash can.
bin.
I'm sorry, it's a trash can.
Yeah, we can see that trash can on fire. We do want to keep our eye on this minivan that's driving through sidewalks right now. Mike, this is a very dangerous situation.
Oh my gosh.
And they're totally in a pedestrian area. They've almost hit a couple of pedestrians. You've got the fire on the right-hand side of the street. I mean, this is very, very quickly transitioned into chaos in multiple parts of downtown. You've got
Yes.
the fire at First and Spring. You've got this really hectic location where Lori is at. And now you've got this minivan that is driving through pedestrian areas with absolutely no regard to anybody. The right side of your picture is now Lauren Posen's live shot where that fire is growing in size as well.
My concern is this
Yeah, I mean, this
minivan
is,
that's just,
Look
you
at
know.
Look out, look
Just
out,
ran
look
towards
out,
the
look out, look
crowd.
out.
Yeah, Lori, you're right by this minivan, right? You see that minivan?
Yes, he just came right at us. Just came right at us.
Lori should probably
Oh
get
my
away from that
God.
area. Yeah.
Driving in reverse right now
Oh my
down the
God.
street. This person was throwing something out of the minivan, and we don't know who they are, how many people are in that minivan. But look, this crowd is now going towards it. Looks
What's
like a
wrong with
gentleman
this
or a
person?
person without a shirt on.
Yeah, shirtless for sure. This is insane. I mean, this person is out to cause harm.
Yeah, and that can be a very scary
boy.
situation here. You can see now the people.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to.
Lori, be careful because that minivan's coming back your direction.
Back towards you.
Woo! Oh! Oh! Oh my God!
And the crowd is now
Okay,
chasing the
this is a
van.
bad situation, guys. This is.
Oh man.
Yeah,
God,
Lori,
this
we
is a
want you
really
to
Lori
bad
should,
situation.
yeah. Look at this.
I mean, you got people chasing just straight up to the driver's side. I mean, I'm throwing things at the van.
That guy had a
This
dog.
person is was driving, you know, through the park right by Olvera Street. They were throwing stuff out of their vehicle, doing donuts in the middle of the roadway. And you know, I don't know if law enforcement even has
Accelerating
an
around the
eye on this
corner.
person, but this is Union Station
Right.
now.
And I will tell you, you know, Mojo just mentioned we had seen that same minivan up over near the overpass. It was the guy was leaning out of the window. He was, you know, jawing at the police officers, jawing at CHP, and they kept trying to tell him to get out of there, get out of there. He just kept yapping and yapping. That's the same guy. So obviously something's happening with him. This, I mean, this is insanity. I don't even know what's
my God, he
happening
just
now.
hit
I
that
mean, look at this
bicyclist.
behind me. This is.
He clipped the back end of that bicyclist and the bicycle went flying.
Yeah, it's just zooming through here right now.
Yeah,
It just
that
parked
guy,
at
I
Union
think he's
Station.
on something, I don't know, but
It parked at Union Station briefly and then just fired the van back up and just kept driving and clearly going incredibly fast. I mean, my goodness.
This person doesn't have a shirt on. They look highly agitated, and now you can see making their way through the back end of Union Station. They're gonna hit a dead end here, I think. No,
Or-
they're not.
or
They're
a
gonna keep
knob
going.
side or train tracks right there.
There is a lot happening right now.
Yeah.
Almost hitting that law enforcement vehicle, that metro vehicle, and take a look going into the parking lot here.
I think he's in the backside of Union Station now
Yeah.
because there's an Amtrak train right there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the dumpster fire is getting bigger right now. I mean, you almost want to say it's incredibly fortunate and lucky that nobody was hit head on by this minivan.
I can't believe they weren't.
Yeah, it's just terrifying to look at right now in a multitude of ways. Well, obviously all this on the right side of your screen is still going on as well.
Yeah, the right side is closer to where Lori was, closer to that Chevron station there on Alameda and Cesar Chavez. And we try to keep our eye on that minivan and that driver who was, you know, looked like driving very erratically. And we were afraid they were going to hit someone because at times they were driving on the sidewalk. So we'll keep our eye on this situation if we can find that driver again. But we want to get to our Lauren Posen because we know she's near Metro headquarters where this fire is now getting larger and larger, and the crowd is as well.
Yeah, Leslie, that's right. As soon as you guys left us, I don't know how to describe them, but they're like, there's those little motorcycle bikes that people are not supposed to ride in the streets, but they do. They went in like circles. They were doing donuts right in front of where that fire is and setting off more fireworks. And it looks like from where I'm at, that fire is getting bigger. I see someone, oh, there we go, another firework. And I'm telling you, I've been out here now for 2 days, and I have heard these flash bombs go off and these fireworks go off, and it still startles me every single time. That's how loud it is. even though we're a block away. It is so loud, you just get jolted. What else can I tell you? I see there's patrol cars making their way around, but I see smoke. That's probably from that firebomb that just went off, the fireworks there. And that fire is just it looks like it's getting bigger. I have not seen any fire trucks come by yet. I'm not quite sure why. They probably have other priorities tonight they're working on within this area. But I'm sure they're aware of it happening. And it is seemed to be just condensed in that one little area there in the corner by that bus stop. Another firework going off there. And now I hear patrol cars coming down. We'll see what happens here. A lot of people just walking by, kind of taking this all in. Here come the patrol cars. I'll let you take a listen.
You can see.
Good man.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 patrol cars. And you can see what I'm talking about here. Now, well, see, the traffic is still going, but, usually when you got patrol cars behind you, you have to move out of the way, but that's not happening here. I also hear people revving up their engines over where the fire is. Mm-hmm. Okay, here come the patrol cars. They might be going to address the situation by the fire over here. Not put it out, but address whoever's throwing things into it. One thing I want to mention, too, when I was out here last night, I was talking to one of the organizers of a protest that was happening yesterday. And I had asked, I said, are the people here, are they being flown in from other states? Because that's something that can happen. In past protests I've covered, that's when I was in Atlanta. People were being flown in to be disruptive. And he told me yesterday, no, everyone here, they're Angelenos. Now, I don't know if that's the same case for tonight, if these are agitators being brought in from different cities, different states, or if they're just people that are very upset, and that's what we're seeing here. It's hard to say right now, but that's something to keep in mind as well, because that's something I've noticed in reporting in other states, that people can be flown in from, as I said, different cities, different states, to cause this type of disruption that we're seeing tonight.
Yeah, and we're just keeping an eye on that fire there as it's still going, but that law enforcement movement, at least toward that area, let's see if it makes a significant difference moving forward. Lauren, in the meantime, over on the left side of your screen here, we're still keeping an eye on that minivan because it's been going in a sort of...
It's going in a circle here, right?
Yeah.
They're circling back to Olvera Street now.
Well, it has moved actually kind of a little bit further east. So they're actually kind of over nearest like Mariachi Plaza. So we did get away from where the rest of the protesters were, but look at this.
Yeah.
This
is
person
nuts.
driving incredibly erratic, and law enforcement already has their hands full in this area. So at this point, we're just hoping they stay away from people. But blowing through intersections here, you can see front end damage almost hitting that vehicle, and we're gonna keep our eye on that. We don't know who this person is, but we did see them head over towards Olvera Street, where they then went into the park. They're now in the East LA area. And so that was a very dangerous situation. Some of those demonstrators even tried to
chase after
that minivan.
Throwing items at the minivan as well. I mean, that's what a few...
that was really intense.
Yeah, yeah. And then clipped a bike at one point too, right?
Yeah,
right, Mike?
the back tire of it. I mean, it looked like the person on the bike was okay, but I definitely saw the bicycle fall after that ordeal. And that was at Union Station. Like, that was in the drop-off area of Union Station. Now, yeah, we're in like the Boyle Heights area here at Savannah and First Street. You see that school, I believe that's Roosevelt High School, that is right beneath it. Now, we had seen the van come down this street right here and then stop around that tree. So I don't know where it went now, but hopefully it's stopped and not continuing to drive the way it was.
Yeah, and that is the hope, because LAPD is not pursuing this vehicle, I don't think they're even aware of that situation. Did they park, Plank?
Yeah, they're back. It's that last car right there on the side of the street. You can tell because it's got such significant front-end damage there.
Yeah, this is either the second or third time now that we've seen it just come to a full stop before. We'll see what it does here, but the last couple
there's the guy. So he's walking back. He'd gotten out. He was shirtless, or he still is shirtless. And there he goes getting back in it.
Yeah, that's a really dangerous situation because he was throwing things at some of the people, and you don't know, is he angry, with the protest?
Under the
Is he
influence.
under
Right.
the influence? Is he just not, you know, is he having a mental health episode? We don't know. We're keeping an eye on that, but then on the other side, you're seeing sparks come from that large fire there outside LAPD headquarters. We saw a massive amount of patrol cars make their way down there, but I don't know if Lauren can hear me. Lauren, are officers making their way to that area, or did they go ahead and stage somewhere else? Okay.
I can't hear you right now, but I can tell you that tear.
Officers were headed this way, but
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but I can tell you that tear gas has been deployed. We can feel it again in our throats. Not as intense as last night, but definitely you can taste it.
He's switching cars.
I'm trying to get reconnected right now.
Oh, wow. Lauren, while we reestablish that connection with you, we'll give you a few minutes if you need it. This keeps getting stranger and stranger, really, with on the left side of your screen with this minivan. Mike, were you saying he was switching cars? Is that what we're looking at right now?
So the van, and I don't know what he's doing, but so you got the van. Oh, here comes law enforcement.
Oh,
so this
okay.
is sheriff.
Okay.
Well, that's the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
It truly is. He was talking to some gentlemen there, and they have come to or put him under arrest here, or at least detain him. Mike, for a moment there, he did turn the lights on a different SUV,
Yeah.
and we thought he was going to get in that one.
And it looked like, I mean, he got in the back of the van. He took out what looked like a coat or something that he was kind of waving off. And then he walked over to what looked like a white SUV and started to get into that one and turn the headlights on like he was about to go, get into that car. Thank goodness this is sheriff's deputies that came in here and are able to take him into custody now.
Yeah, well, at least this comes to an end here.
Yeah.
An especially dangerous situation that could have been cataclysmically worse.
That was wild.
For these last half an hour, these last 20 minutes or so. Let's go back to Lauren right now, because we're obviously monitoring two situations at once, including this one. The other one, Lauren, you were saying that tear gas was being deployed, not quite as intense as last night, but what's the situation like right now?
So we kind of got the drift of it, the aftermath of it, wherever it was deployed. I couldn't tell you where it was, but you could just taste it in the air. I'm assuming it was a block up from where we are. I didn't.
Okay, so I just wanted to run that at the end of this. I thought the whole episode was weird. I thought it was strange that, am I on? Yes. I thought the whole thing was strange, and that okay, look, you've all watched Cops, okay? What happens in Cops? If there's a high-speed chase, they always tackle the guy. There's like 15 units. In this case, the guy is changing cars calmly. The police know exactly where to go, even though nobody was chasing him. He surrenders calmly. He walks to the corner, and that's it. It's over. Don't pay attention. Meanwhile, the girl who I do praise for her tactical, bravery, she's really trying to pull the attention of the audience to, the dumpster fire. Who cares? Away from the minivan. And then she says, basically, we don't know who this person is. They never know who the person is. Why would they? So and she also stated he was on the overpass earlier, like egging people on. I think this guy was employed by someone to keep the protesters agitated and going. That's what it was. As far as the things he was throwing from the minivan, he was throwing the rocks back at the protesters that they threw into the van. Now, what's really interesting, God, I know I should have cut this feed off a long time ago, but if I can find it, when I went to KCAL News, I found this. This will blow your mind. Let me see, minivan, KCAL News. Basically what I found while I'm looking, so you're not in suspense. I gotta shut off the timer on these lights. I'm really sorry. They go on and off. Let me just turn this back on. There we go. Okay, so basically, what was interesting is that they got away from the story. They didn't really talk about the story. I know LAPD put out something that was, we arrested the minivan, and they're like, good, he got arrested. But and maybe people have more information. I haven't really looked into it. And by the way, when you're looking at so many things, you forget a lot of things that happened. That's why I recorded the entire LA riots since Saturday. And you can find those on my Investigate Everything channel on Daily Clout's Rumble. Just look for Investigate Everything with Brian O'Shea. But let me just do this. And KCal. I don't want to tell you what I'm talking about. I want you to see it with your own eyes. Okay, so here we go. Yeah. All right, so when I went to KCal, I type in minivan. Share the screen. I type in minivan and KCal News. That's the California local CBS affiliate. And this is what I saw. I kid you not. They're like, I can't make this stuff up. Okay. So you go here and you type in minivan at KCal. Okay, and then so it says minivan driver now in custody, could have been cataclysmically worse. Thank you, KCal newsman, whatever. Now scroll a little bit. Now, and by the way, okay, could have been worse. And then someone says ABC7 is the worst. Half their stories are bootlicking and the other half are Disney product placement. At least KCal News showed the crazy minivan guy and the dude wearing a shirt saying Chingatu MAGA. And then Robert Stansbury says, minivan driver now in custody, could have been cataclysmic worse. Thank you, KCal Newsman. Okay, some Yahoo in a minivan has plowed through a crowd of journos, is now now leading a street pursuit. There's no pursuit, dude. I didn't see any cops pursuing him. Now, scroll up a little bit. You get to March 6th, long ago, in real time. And look at this. Norwalk's family minivan stolen from driveway. Not saying it's a minivan. I gotta say, it kind of looks like the gray minivan that was in the pursuit. Don't know what that means. Look, what I am saying about the minivan is pay attention to it. Everything about this riot in LA has J6 written all over it. I think LA authorities, maybe not the cops, but LA government needed this to be violent for some reason. They want attention focused on this. Brandon talked about this. Turning forces inward, deploying Marines, deploying National Guard. And then what's happening this weekend? We have a massive nationwide protest. So pay attention to these things. And people, please, in your small towns, in your big towns, in your cities, in your boroughs, wherever you live, if you see something that looks wrong, call someone. Call the White House, call the FBI. Not that that will get you far, but do something. Do something. Because don't act like it's not your problem, because this is World War III, and it's all of our problem. And we have to do our best to protect this country and our homes. And if you don't want to protect this country, that's your choice. That's why this country is great. You have choices. Protect your community and protect your home. That's all I can ask of you. So stay strong, stay salty, stay alert, stay vigilant, stay awesome. And you guys are awesome. And thank you for tuning in. Investigate everything. That's the only way we can make this entire country a slow go or no go zone for the enemy. All right. Peace.